Greetings, and welcome back to our Standing Watch program. Recently, a newscaster asked a religious teacher on television whether the United States of America was mentioned in the Bible. Now, this is perhaps a surprising question. Would you know the answer? Now, many will point out, those who know a little bit about the Bible, that of course the words United States of America are not mentioned in Scripture at all. But let us consider this. There are many prophecies for certain, in comparison to the United States, minor influential countries contained in Scripture. Prophecies about Egypt, prophecies about Syria and Damascus, prophecies about the state of Israel and the tribe of Judah, prophecies which still have to be fulfilled. Is it conceivable then that God would have ignored the most powerful nations on the earth today, nations like China, Russia, India, Japan, Germany, France, and Great Britain, or the United States of America? Well, the answer is he has not. In fact, the Bible is filled with prophecies and with historical records about those nations. But of course, they are being identified with other names, with names as they were known at the time. The United States of America didn't even exist yet as a nation when the Bible was written. But what we find in Scripture is that the origins of the United States of America are clearly mentioned. The origins of the people who would ultimately form this great nation. When I learned the facts and the truth about this marvelous and awesome subject, I was still living in Germany. Now, you might have detected a slight accent. Some say I do have one, even though my accent becomes more and more popular in California, where I'm making this program. But you see, when I studied into this, it wasn't like I had the foregone conclusion of proving that the United States of America is in fact mentioned in the Bible. It wasn't anything which I wanted to see, but after I had studied into the records, I had to admit that this was so. And the proofs are ironclad. They are absolutely convincing. And I intend to give you those proofs in this program and in future programs, in a whole series of programs on this vitally important subject. Because once you understand where the Bible mentions the United States of America and other nations, you also will know what is prophesied for them to happen in the future, in the near future, not the distant future. And so I like to go back to the origins. I like to go back to an Old Testament book, which is called Genesis, the very first book of Moses. It's called In the Beginning, and it does talk about beginnings. It talks about how God created the heavens and the earth, and it also talks about the beginnings of nations, how the nations which we have today came into existence. And so we have to start with a very prominent and famous figure in the Bible. His name is Abraham. You have heard of Abraham, the father of the faithful. He was called that way because he was obedient to God, and he believed God. He believed in his promises. He believed that what God was telling him was true. And so Abraham received incredible promises from God, incredible blessings, and God told him that he would become a father of many nations. Now, that wasn't fulfilled in the time of Abraham at all. Abraham never became a father of many nations when he was still alive. And then we find that these promises were then also given to his son Isaac. We call those promises generally the birthright promises. And so the birthright was given to the firstborn son, and it was a special blessing. The firstborn son would get a double portion of the inheritance of his parents. However, Isaac, technically speaking, was not the firstborn son of Abraham. That was Ishmael. But you know the story. Abraham and Sarah didn't have enough faith on that occasion that God would actually produce a son through them. And so Abraham had intercourse with the maid of Sarah, and they produced Ishmael. But that wasn't pleasing in God's eyes, and God said, no, Ishmael is not supposed to be your firstborn. Isaac, who will be born from you and Sarah, is going to be the firstborn. And that is how it happened. And so those firstborn blessings were then passed on to Isaac, and Isaac would then become the father of many nations. That didn't happen at the time of Isaac either. And then you know the story about Isaac's two sons, Jacob and Esau. Now again, Esau was the firstborn. Esau should have received the birthright, and he should have received the blessing from his father Isaac. But of course he despised his birthright, and he sold his birthright to his brother Jacob for a dish of lentil soup. And then Isaac was deceived by Jacob, thinking that he actually was Esau, and so Isaac blessed Jacob and gave him the blessing of the birthright. Of course then Jacob had to flee. Esau was trying to kill him. And so he went to his brother Laban. And there he married Leah, thinking that it was Rachel, because Laban deceived him as Jacob had deceived Esau and Isaac. And then he stayed for another 7 years, and then he also received Rachel as his wife, and also he had intercourse with the handmaids of his wives, and 12 sons were born. The firstborn was Reuben. But Reuben lost his birthright because he had sexual intercourse with one of Jacob's concubines. And so the birthright was passed to Joseph. Now Joseph actually was the firstborn of Jacob's wife Rachel. And you know that story, how Joseph was sold by his envious brothers to Egypt into slavery. But he became a very prominent man in Egypt. And then later he was able to make contact again with his father Jacob and his brothers, and they all came to Egypt and lived there. And just before his death, Joseph presented to Jacob his two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, asking his father Jacob to bless them and to give that special birthright blessing to his firstborn son Manasseh. And so Jacob was supposed to put his right hand on the head of Manasseh to bless him and give him this birthright blessing. But again, a transfer took place because Jacob put his left hand on Manasseh and his right hand on the secondborn Ephraim. And Joseph tried to stop him, saying, "Oh no, my father, not this way. Put your right hand on Manasseh. He is the firstborn." And Jacob said, I know very well. And he will become a great nation, but his younger brother will become a multitude of nations. And some translations have it here, a Commonwealth of Nations. Now, jumping ahead, way ahead in the story, let me just ask you a question, my friends. What power block in the 18th, 19th, and even 20th century has been called a Commonwealth of Nations? There is only one. There is only one. It is a British Empire. It was so big, and it's still called the Commonwealth, consisting of nations like Canada and New Zealand, Australia, and other nations. It was so big that the sun wouldn't even set on it. But its glory has faded away. And what is a nation in our modern times which can really and truly be called great? Again, there is only one nation, and that is the United States of America. I recently listened to a parliamentary debate, and one of the senators said that the United States of America is the most powerful nation which has ever existed on the face of the earth in comparison. And as I will show you, my friends, in subsequent programs, in fact, Ephraim and Manasseh are the forefathers of what we would call now the British Commonwealth and the United States of America. The proofs which I will present to you are irrefutable. But there are also dire warnings attached, because those prophecies which did proclaim that those nations would become extremely great also say that the nations will more and more lose influence and power, and there are reasons for that as well. And I will go into all of this in future programs, so I just encourage you to stay tuned and to listen to these series of programs, because they are of vital importance for you and your loved ones. In the meantime, I would encourage you to ask for our free booklets. The Fall and Rise of Britain and America. The Fall and Rise of Britain and America. This booklet includes many of the things I am telling you in these programs. They will also give you the backup proof as to why it is without any question true that the United States of America and Great Britain are mentioned in the Bible. And so you can get a head start and ask for this booklet and read it or download it from our website and get already familiar a little bit with those facts. They are startling facts, and you need to know them. Until next time, this is Norbert Link for the Standing Watch program.